Today's pro-Palestinian protests have prompted some to compare them to campus protests in the 1960s. But when we look over time, is it really the same? CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. Anthony, good to see you. So let's try to make sense of all of this. Are these protests the same?
I think they're different. Let me show you this. We went back into the archives, and yes, there were CBS News polls in 1969.
How convenient.
We keep them securely tucked away in what I like to call the poll vault.
Okay.
And so let's take a look at this. At that time, 77% of Americans said they disapproved of the protests going on against U.S. involvement in Vietnam. But the context here is different. Number one, the U.S. was actively involved with its military in that war. The other thing you look at is, yes, you had 19% approval, and that was a little bit higher for younger people in their 20s. However, they were also getting drafted. There was a draft going on. So, again, different context. Yes, a lot taking place on college campuses. Yes, there was a war, but those are things that you have to remember. Oftentimes, if people agree with protests, it has more to do with their ideology or whether or not they agree with the expressed ideas of the protest. Let me rewind the time machine just a little bit to more recent times. In 2020, when we talked to people about how they felt about people protesting the treatment of African Americans by police, well, you had a slight majority there support. You had fairly similar levels of support among those under 30. But if people said that they agreed at the time with the ideas of the Black Lives Matter movement, then support for those protests went up dramatically. So again, that's one historical illustration of the example that it really matters what you think about the subject matter, Caitlin.
Yeah, that's super interesting, Anthony, especially, how much of a stake you have personally in that issue. As you mentioned, in the late 1960s, the stakes were pretty high considering getting drafted. What about the demographics here? I mean, the groups that we're talking about, I mean, not everyone's in college, right?
Exactly. So let me show you two things real quick. The first, it echoes what I was saying earlier. When you just look at the policy, whether or not you think Joe Biden should be trying to get Israel to stop its military actions, the views of those under 30 are, again, very similar to all Americans. And to your point about not everyone being in college, yeah, it's a third. It's a third of folks who are at, give it over 25. That's the time at which people might complete a degree if they are getting one. So it's a majority of folks that don't have a college degree. And that's important because not all young people are in college or getting a college degree. And so that may or may not be representative of that wider stretch of the demographic, Caitlin.
Yeah, that's an important nuance there. Anthony Salvanto, Director of Elections and Surveys, and also the gatekeeper of the poll vault. We appreciate it.
Thank you.